You ever had one of those moments where your entire life, past, present, and whatever future you thought you had, just folds in on itself like a collapsing tent? Yeah, that was me on a Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, scouring the internet for the perfect Sweet 16 venue. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. 16 years of loving her, raising her, protecting her like she was carved out of my own ribs. I had folders of ideas, color schemes, venues, playlists. Hell, I even had a Pinterest account under a fake name so I wouldn't look like some suburban dad in a midlife crisis. I wanted this to be perfect. Not for the cameras, not for the neighbors, but for her. And then my phone buzzed. The message preview said, "I hate him. Thank God he's not my real dad. He's just a walking ATM for us." My first reaction was confusion. Thought maybe it was spam. You know how scammers are, cold, random, invasive. But then I saw who it was from. My daughter. Let me tell you something. There's a distinct kind of nausea that hits you when someone you take a bullet for accidentally fires the gun at you. I opened the full message. Read it once, then twice, then a third time just to make sure my brain wasn't scrambling the words out of mercy. I hate him. Thank God he's not my real dad. He's just a walking ATM for us. I've even been spitting in his food every day for the past 5 years. My hands went cold, mouth dry, stomach twisted like someone had pulled the emergency brake on my entire body. I sat there, staring at the screen, blinking like maybe, I could unread it. I couldn't. I scrolled up. Maybe it was part of a larger joke. Maybe she was role-playing something stupid with a friend. Some edgy teen drama garbage. But no, this wasn't satire. She followed it with, "Ugh, I can't believe he's planning my party like some proud dad. Wait till he finds out the truth, LOL." She meant to send it to her friend. Send it to me instead. There's no autocorrect in the world that could have saved her from that one. I stared at that message like it was a murder confession, and in a way it was. The man I thought I was, the father I thought I'd been, murdered in 160 characters or less. But she didn't stop there. No, apparently betrayal runs in the family. Because just a few scrolls down was the bombshell that sent my world spinning off its axis. Turns out I wasn't her biological father. That honor went to my wife's ex-boyfriend. Yeah, the guy she swore was just some loser she dated in high school. Guess the joke's on me. Let me set the scene real quick. I was in a gray hoodie, mesh shorts, and slippers, typical dad mode. But inside, I was full-on nuclear. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I stood up, calm as a monk, walked to the bedroom, and opened the top drawer of my nightstand. You know the one. I don't even remember making the decision. Just remember the weight of the cold metal in my hand, the click of the safety, and the eerie clarity that washed over me like a cleansing fire. I was going to pay him a visit. It wasn't rage, not exactly. It was betrayal congealed into something heavier, like grief mixed with concrete. I walked to the garage, got in the car, and drove. The GPS wasn't even necessary. I knew where the bastard lived. We all have that one address burned into our memory, the one place you never thought you'd have to go again. As I drove, my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree on fire. Calls, texts, buzz after buzz. I ignored every single one. I was locked in, eyes on the road, jaw clenched, grip tight on the wheel. I was driving toward closure. At least, that's what I told myself. By the time I reached his street, I had 130 missed calls from my wife. 130. That number alone almost made me laugh. 130 calls? That's not concern. That's desperation. And you know what desperation smells like? Guilt. I parked a few houses down. Sat there in the car, engine idling, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was knocking on my ribs trying to get out. I glanced down at the phone again. 130 calls. And not one of them changed what I'd read. Not one of them erased the fact that the girl I raised like my own thought I was nothing more than a piggy bank with a pulse. That she had been poisoning my food with her spit every day for 5 years. That my wife had lied to me every single day of our marriage. That the party I was planning was a celebration of someone else's child, while I played the role of loving, oblivious dad. I looked at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. Who was this guy? I didn't recognize him. Not fully. He looked like me, yeah, but the eyes? The eyes were colder, older, done. And that's when it started to hit. Not the pain, not yet. That came later. What hit first was clarity. A kind of chilling realization that I had been living someone else's lie. wearing it like a tailored suit, smiling through every deception because I love them. God help me, I love them. But love, I was learning, is a poor defense against betrayal that you'd think that with 130 missed calls lighting up my screen like a slot machine hitting the jackpot, I'd feel something. Fear, doubt, maybe even a sliver of sympathy? Nah, I felt absolutely nothing. That's the real scary part. It wasn't rage pumping through my veins anymore. It was clarity. Ice-cold, dead-eyed clarity. Like my brain had just finished a marathon of betrayal documentaries and decided to produce its own damn sequel, starring me. I sat in that car on the side of his street for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. I don't know. Time lost its meaning somewhere between her message and the safety clicking off. I was just floating in it, watching my breath fog up the windshield, watching the house. His house. Funny thing, it wasn't even a nice house. Peeling paint, a sagging porch, that one trash can with the busted lid tipped over on the sidewalk like it had given up, too. This is the guy she risked everything for? My wife went from Sunday brunch and family photo albums to this. You know, there's a certain type of stupid that requires effort. Like, you really have to work hard to make every bad decision available. And apparently, my wife was a damn overachiever. My phone buzzed again. Call number 131. I didn't answer, but this time I stared at her name on the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button like I was defusing a bomb. I used to love seeing her name pop up. Used to get that flutter in my chest when she'd call out of the blue, just to say she missed me. Now, it was just noise. Static. A reminder that everything I thought was solid had been sitting on a foundation of wet cardboard. I finally shut the phone off. Cold turkey. And then, I laughed. I laughed like a man who'd just tripped over a grave marker with his own name on it. It wasn't funny. Nothing about this was funny, but it was either laugh or start screaming and never stop. So yeah, I laughed. For a solid 30 seconds. Like some lunatic parked outside his own replacement's house. I didn't even realize I was gripping the piece until my knuckles went white. I loosened my fingers one by one, placed it on the passenger seat, and just stared at it. Here's the part they never tell you in all those revenge stories. When you're that deep in betrayal, it's not about the weapon. It's about what's left of you after everything else is gone. And right then, I wasn't sure there was anything left worth saving. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't drive out there for a friendly conversation. I didn't pack heat for emotional support. But when I looked at that cold, unblinking piece of steel, it was like seeing myself in the mirror for the first time in 16 years. What was I going to do? Kick down the door and play God? Make him confess? Scream until the neighbors got a front row seat to my heartbreak? That's the problem with betrayal. It leaves you with no script, just a raw, burning improvisation. But before I could even open the door, the front porch light clicked on. I froze, half expecting some divine intervention, or at least a sign that the guy I came to confront was home. But no, it wasn't him. It was her, my wife, wearing his hoodie. She looked around like she was checking for raccoons, then took out her phone and started dialing again, probably wondering why her husband wasn't answering after only 131 calls. She didn't see me, and I just sat there in the shadows, watching her like I was watching the end of a movie I never wanted to be in. My hands rested on the wheel. I didn't move, didn't blink. She paced the porch, talking into the phone with that frantic tone of someone who knew the lies were collapsing fast. I saw her stop mid-sentence, stare down at her phone, then clutch it to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Good. Let her fall. Let them both fall. Eventually, she went back inside. Porch light flicked off. Silence returned. I started the car, but not to drive up. Just to feel the engine again. Something alive. Something that still worked the way it was supposed to. I sat there for a few more minutes, foot on the brake, staring at that dark house and everything it represented. I could have ended it right there. But instead, I put the car in reverse. See, here's the twist they never expect in these stories. Everyone thinks the betrayed husband goes off the rails, ends up on the news, ruins his life while they move on with theirs. But not me. I wasn't about to become a footnote in their story. No, I was going to write a whole new book. And in this one, I wasn't the fool. Let them wonder what I was going to do. Let them feel the clock ticking every time their phone buzzed. Let them stew in the panic they created. I turned the car around and drove off into the night, not with vengeance in my heart, but with a plan that I didn't go home that night. Didn't want to hear the lies rehearsed in the mirror and served with a trembling voice. Didn't want to see my daughter pretend she hadn't nuked 16 years of fatherhood with one careless swipe of her thumb. No, I needed quiet. The kind of quiet you can only find when the world thinks you've gone off the deep end. And maybe you have, just not in the way they expected. I drove around for hours. No music, no destination. Just me, the road, and the silence buzzing louder than any argument ever could. At some point, I parked near a 24-hour diner, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and regret, and watched the early morning trucks roll through town like they had somewhere to be. I was envious of that, having somewhere to be. Eventually, the sun started to rise, and with it came the kind of numb exhaustion you only get after an emotional decapitation. That's when I checked my phone again. I turned it back on and braced for impact. 173 missed calls from my wife, 33 from my daughter, 20 texts from her best friend, who apparently realized what had happened and was now panicking harder than a squirrel in traffic. There was a voicemail, too. I stared at the notification for a solid minute before I hit play. Baby, please, it was a mistake. She didn't mean it. She's just angry. She's a teenager, and you know how she gets. And that stuff about her real dad, it's not what you think. Just come home. Please. We need to talk. I love you. Click. Not a single I'm sorry. Not 1 ounce of accountability. Just damage control. That's what it always boils down to with people like her. Not fixing the wreckage, just trying to mop up enough blood to make it look like an accident. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a list. Not on paper, not on my phone. Just in my head. Simple, clean. Like an exit strategy from a life that had turned out to be a long con with a birthday cake on top. Step 1. See a lawyer. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. And I damn sure wasn't about to sit down for some "let's work this out for the kids" nonsense. There were no kids left. Just one girl biologically tied to another man, who saw me as nothing but a debit card with legs. And frankly, I didn't know which betrayal hurt more, my wife's silence or my daughter's spit. That was the real kicker. The spit. I mean, do you know how intimate cooking is? Every meal I made for her, I made with love. Pancakes shaped like animals. Homemade mac and cheese when she had a bad day. Chicken noodle soup when she was sick. And the whole time, she was spitting in it. 5 years, she said. That wasn't a tantrum. That was hatred in slow motion. And me? I just smiled through every bite. They talk about red flags in relationships. What they don't tell you is how easy it is to paint them white when you love someone enough. I'd been whitewashing red flags since before she was in braces. So yeah, I made my list. Lawyer first, then the financial lockdown. I had access to the accounts, and I wasn't about to fund my own humiliation another day. I'd been a walking ATM, right? Time to close the bank. You know what the saddest part is? It wasn't just the betrayal. It was realizing how much of my identity was wrapped up in them. The father, the husband, the provider. I wasn't just losing my family. I was losing me. But here's the upside to being shattered into pieces. You get to decide which ones are worth picking back up. By 9 a.m., I was in a lawyer's office. Clean place. Minimalist decor. Everything smelled like lemon cleaner and legal fees. The attorney, a guy named Carter with the posture of a coat rack, listened in silence as I laid it all out. Every word. Every detail. He didn't blink once. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair and said, "We'll hit them with the full storm." I liked him immediately. While Carter started working the legal angles, I was on to step 2. The locks. Changed. Immediately. I didn't care if her name was on the lease. The second she chose him, she lost her seat at the table. Let her stand outside like the choices she made. I didn't even wait for confrontation. I hired a locksmith and went full cold mode. Texted her the new address to her guilt hotel, her mother's place. Don't come back. You made your choice. No explanation. No room for her to wiggle in with another sob story about teenage hormones, and it didn't mean anything. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. And done is a beautiful thing when you've been surviving on emotional IOUs. I boxed up her things with surgical precision. Every photo, every necklace I gave her, every fake smile captured in fake happy moments. All of it. Taped shut. Labeled past. Even my daughter's room didn't escape it. You see, love without respect is just a contract, and I was done with bad deals. By noon, the house was silent. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was clean. Like a storm had come through and finally taken all the rot with it. I stood in the doorway, looking at the hollow shell of the life I used to have, and realized something. For the first time in 16 years, I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I was just a man. And that felt like freedom. You ever seen a man cut his own parachute mid-fall? That was me, standing in the middle of my kitchen, if you can still call it my kitchen, with 2 boxes full of lies labeled wife and daughter. And when I say daughter, I mean that in the legal, raised you, cried through your broken arm kind of way. Not biological. That honor apparently belonged to some guy who probably listens to Creed unironically and never had to foot a back-to-school shopping list in his life. I looked down at the notes she used to leave me on Father's Day. Best dad ever, drawn in crayon with little hearts. They were all there in a shoebox I'd saved like they were precious. And maybe they were once. Now, they felt like forged documents in a fake identity case. Carter, my lawyer, called around 3 p.m. We're filing for divorce under grounds of fraud and emotional distress. You've got a strong case. Given the paternity issue and the financial manipulation, we can come out of this with the house, most of the assets, and, best part, clean hands. Clean hands. It's funny. I'd never felt dirtier. The doorbell rang around 4. I didn't answer it. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. I watched through the side window. There she was, my wife. The woman who used to slow dance with me in the kitchen while dinner simmered. Now she was standing on the porch, wearing guilt like an accessory that didn't quite match her outfit. She knocked, waited, called out my name, knocked again. Behind her stood our daughter. My daughter. Or maybe just the girl I raised. She looked different. Not physically. No, she still had that same ponytail, same face I'd kissed goodnight 1,000 times. But the way she stood behind her mother, arms folded, eyes darting everywhere but the door, that was a stranger. A stranger who'd once called me Daddy without hesitation. I didn't open the door. Instead, I walked back into the kitchen and turned on the blender just to drown them out. Childish. Maybe. But sometimes petty is the only fuel you've got left in the tank. Eventually, they left. Or at least, they left the porch. I know because I watched the cameras on my phone. Yeah, I installed a security system the same day I changed the locks. No more surprises. No more uninvited guests in the home I bought, furnished, and bled for. An hour later, my phone buzzed. This time it was a message. You're really going to do this? To her? To us. I stared at it for a while. Us. What a convenient word for people who only want your support, not your truth. I typed back. There is no us. There's you, him, and the teenage psychopath you two raised. Good luck with that. Blocked. Deleted. Done. They say forgiveness is freeing. But let me tell you, clarity is liberation in its purest form. Forgiveness is for people who want to rebuild. I was burning the blueprints. And then came the envelope. I found it taped to my front door the next morning, like some kind of sad, low-budget apology attempt. Inside was a letter from her. Handwritten. Like we were in a Nicholas Sparks novel now. It started with, I know you must hate me. Well, she got that part right. Not hate in the angry, throw something at the wall way. Hate in the I don't know how I ever loved you kind of way. The clean-cut, surgical hate that comes from waking up to a reality you've been lied into. She went on and on. How it was a mistake. How she didn't tell me because she didn't want to ruin our family. How she convinced herself it didn't matter who the biological father was because I was the one who showed up. Sweetheart, I was the one who paid the price. Paid for ballet. Paid for braces. Paid for therapy when the dog died. Paid with my time, my money, and my damn soul. And now you want to spin it like I should get a medal for stepping up in a rigged game? No thank you. The letter ended with a plea. Please come talk to her. She's just a child. She didn't mean it. You don't spit in someone's food for 5 years by accident. You don't text your best friend and call the man who raised you just a walking ATM, unless that's how you truly see him. She wasn't a child. She was a mirror of the woman who raised her. And let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Sometimes the people closest to you aren't family. They're just familiar. I sat on the porch later that night with a glass of bourbon in hand, and the letter folded neatly into the ashtray. I didn't burn it. Not yet. I wanted it there, as a reminder. A paperweight made of regret. The air was cool, quiet, and for the first time in a long time. So there's a moment every man fears more than a heart attack, more than bankruptcy, more than death by cholesterol-loaded bacon cheeseburgers. It's the moment you realize you were never the father. You just played one on TV. And I don't mean the biological stuff. I'm talking about the kind of father who wipes away tears, ties shoelaces with fingers sore from work, stands in the freezing rain for every game, every recital, every half-hearted spelling bee. The man who gives so much of himself that he forgets where he ends and they begin. Yeah, that guy. The sucker. The mark. Me. So there I was, Saturday morning, 7:04 a.m., sipping the last good coffee I'd make in that house. Why? Because I was done playing dad to a kid who thought I was a glorified vending machine with a pulse. I was unsubscribing from fatherhood, with zero chance of renewal. Don't get me wrong, I still remembered everything. That's the curse. I remembered how she used to wrap her little arms around my neck and whisper, "I love you more than all the stars, Daddy." How she cried when her goldfish died and asked me if fish go to heaven. I even remembered the first time she called me Dad instead of Dada. I nearly cried in the frozen food aisle. And all of that, poisoned. Not because it wasn't real at the time, but because it wasn't built to last. It was a sandcastle love. Pretty, fragile, and one tied away from collapse. I picked up my phone and opened the contacts. Her name sat there. My girl, two hearts. Yeah, I know. I used to be that guy. Delete. Then my wife's name. Love of my life, red heart. Delete. One by one. I gutted my phone like a man pulling weeds out by the root. Not just cutting them. Yanking. Making sure nothing came back. My phone was a war zone. Missed calls. Unread messages. We need to talk. Please don't do this. You're overreacting. Right. I was overreacting to finding out my whole family had been gaslighting me while I paid the bills and took their disrespect with a smile. It wasn't overreacting. It was waking up. The next step? I wrote a letter of my own. Not the crying, shaky-handed, "Please don't leave me" kind. I'm talking cold steel on paper. To whom it clearly no longer concerns. I'm not your dad. Not biologically. Not emotionally. Not anymore. I was. God, I was. I gave you every ounce of me. Not just money. Not just shelter. I gave you belief. I believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. I protected you, defended you, forgave you. Hell, I even believed the best when your worst was staring me dead in the face. But belief is earned. And you spend it like Monopoly money. So here's what's going to happen. I'm cutting you off. No more money. No more support. No more pretending. The Sweet 16 party is canceled. If you want to celebrate, ask your real dad, assuming he remembers your name. I will not be speaking to either of you again unless it's through attorneys. I don't hate you. I don't wish you harm. I just want you to live in the world you built. Sincerely, the man you mistook for a wallet. I printed 2 copies, dropped one in each of their mailboxes, and walked away without looking back. Let them read it over cereal. Let them chew on truth instead of cornflakes for once. Later that day, I got an email from the venue I'd booked for the party. They said my wife had tried to call and reschedule the event using my name and credit card. I canceled the whole damn thing, then froze the card, called the bank and said, "Anyone tries to use this, prosecute them like they robbed Fort Knox." Petty? Maybe. But at this point, my pettiness was just self-respect in sharper clothes. By Sunday, the house felt like a museum. Their pictures were off the walls. Drawers empty. Closets cleared. Every trace of them reduced to boxes in the garage labeled "Return to Sender." I found a pair of her baby's shoes in the. They were the last thing I held on to. I stood there for. Then I threw them. Because love that walks out on you doesn't by Monday. The silence had settled in like dust in a house no longer lived in. I wasn't just alone. I was observed. Word had gotten out. Friends, neighbors, co-workers. They all smelled the drama from a mile away. It didn't matter how neat I made the exit. People always want to rubberneck at a wreck. That morning, Mrs. Abrams from across the street gave me the look. You know the one. The pity smile. It's like she was saying, "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry your fake family imploded. Would you like a lasagna and a hug?" No, thank you, Carol. I don't need your sympathy. I need a solid Wi-Fi signal and the legal system to work. The hardest part was work. I walked into the office, and people stared. Not the open mouth, gasping kind of stare. This was the subtle, "I read your family's dirty laundry on Facebook" version. That's right, someone, probably the human tornado I used to call my wife, decided to share her truth. According to her post, I was an unforgiving man who abandoned a child emotionally. Apparently, discovering I wasn't the biological father and that she'd been spitting in my food was supposed to be a character-building moment for me. Character building? Lady, this isn't a Pixar movie. But I didn't respond. Not on social media, not in person. Because silence, when chosen, is more powerful than any shouting match. She could post all she wanted. I was busy building something better, my exit. And besides, she could never tell the story without telling on herself. Anytime she tried to play the victim, she'd have to explain why the man she loved and trusted walked out overnight, canceled the party, and boxed up their lives like expired cereal. Spoiler alert, there's no version of that story that ends with her looking good. Meanwhile, Carter, my lawyer, was a machine. He'd locked up the accounts, scheduled the court hearings, and filed for DNA confirmation just to put the final nail in the paternity coffin. We already knew the answer, but legal confirmation? That was power. The results came in Thursday. I didn't cry, didn't even blink. Just took the envelope, thanked the woman who handed it to me, and drove home with the soundtrack of my life playing nothing but static. Not the father, of course, but this wasn't Maury. There was no applause, just a deep, aching silence. And you know what? It felt good, because silence is better than lies. At least silence doesn't try to convince you that betrayal is love in disguise. There's something oddly liberating about watching someone try to shame you when they're standing in a puddle of their own decisions. My wife, well, ex-wife, legally pending, had gone on full social media tour mode. Inspirational quotes, sad selfies, paragraphs about emotional abuse and narcissistic partners. And everyone knew. Oh, they pretended not to. Tried to stay neutral. But deep down, you could feel it. People know when someone's lying. Even if they want to believe them, the stench is there. And betrayal stinks worse than anything. I got a call from Dave, an old buddy who'd gone quiet after everything blew up. Hey man, just checking in. Translation. So, I saw the fireworks. You good? I told him I was. And I meant it. Because I was finally sleeping again. Really sleeping. Not the kind where you wake up already tired because your soul was working overtime trying to pretend everything was fine. I'd gone to the gym twice. Cooked for myself. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. You'd be surprised how good food tastes when you know no one's been sabotaging it out of spite. I even started journaling. Yeah, I know. Sounds like something I'd roll my eyes at 6 months ago. But it helped. Helped me see where I'd bent over backward for people who'd never even leaned in. And then came the text. From her. The girl I'd raised. The one who used to draw me stick figures and beg me to read Goodnight Moon 5 times in a row. I messed up. Can we talk? 7 words. Felt like 7 years of weight dropped on my chest. But I didn't reply. Not right away. Not because I hated her, but because I loved her too much to lie to her again. I needed time. When I finally met with her, it wasn't at home. We met at a cafe. Neutral ground. She walked in, sat down, and looked smaller. Not physically, just smaller. Like the arrogance had deflated. Like the weight of her words had finally caught up with her. I was angry, she said. I nodded. Let her talk. I didn't mean what I said. I was trying to act cool. My friend. She said I was stupid for being nice to you. That part didn't sting. It burned. So you spat in my food for 5 years. Her eyes dropped. Only sometimes. Ah, I said. So, just some of the meals I cooked for you were laced with hatred. That's comforting. She cried. I let her. But I didn't hug her. That was over. That part of me, that dad, was gone. And I told her that. I'll always care about you. I raised you. But what you did wasn't a phase. It was a choice. And choices have consequences. She nodded, sobbing now. I'm not your enemy. But I can't be your father anymore. Those words hurt me more than they hurt her. But they needed to be said. She'd have to rebuild, and maybe someday she could. But not with me. I sold the house. Packed it all up. The wedding photos. The memories. The broken furniture and the broken promises. Moved into a loft downtown. Smaller. Simpler. Mine. Started going by just my first name with people. No more dad. No more Mr. So-and-so. Just me. I picked up old hobbies. Photography, cycling, woodwork. Started living like a man who didn't have to carry the weight of a family that was never really his. You ever take a breath so deep your ribs hurt? That's what healing feels like. And I'd finally started to heal that a year later. I got an anonymous card. Inside it said, you didn't deserve any of it. Thank you for being better than we were. No signature. Didn't need one. I stood by my window that night, glass of scotch in hand, and thought about everything that had happened. The lies. The loss. The freedom. I had been a husband. a father, a fool. Now, I was just a man, but I was a man who knew. And when you know, when you've stood in the fire and refused to burn, you come out stronger than steel. Let them call me cold. Let them call me bitter. But no one would ever again call me blind. And that's a story worth surviving.